our very good friend, Steve Yates, who this is his wheelhouse. He's a senior fellow and AFPI, America First Policy Institute, China Policy Initiative chair. He's also former president of Radio Free Asia. He joins us now on Skype. Stephen, this is crazy. In Brooklyn, which was, as New York Times puts it, just discovered. No jurisdiction, no apparently diplomatic authority, no awareness from our, how is that even possible? No awareness from our government. I mean, we can like follow and find people who do unlawful parading at the Capitol, like from a couple of years ago on January 6th, but we can't find this, like CCP entities operating outposts to monitor people. Tell us about it, because I don't even know how something like this I don't know how long it's been there, how it can even be here in the United States with our government not knowing.
Well, Dan, it all comes down to priorities, and it comes down to your seriousness about what are real threats. I mean, if we have our national leadership telling our military that pronouns and the weather are the number one things they need to focus on, you can imagine how it filters down to law enforcement and others in states and cities where they've been told that they're part of the problem. And if you think after 9/11, all that we grappled with about how do you target extremists and subversive activities within our own borders without getting branded racist or whatever else, we just are at a similar inflection point with regard to the Chinese Communist Party, where it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that they infected the world and stole trillions of dollars out of our economies. They're trying to subvert our institutions. And if you aren't telling and cooperating with local law enforcement, a member of which happens to be the new mayor of New York, you'd think that there would be actually a good infrastructure to track this kind of stuff. But I think the short answer to your question is, if you're determined to not look for this stuff, you can't be surprised to be caught late with it already growing in your community.
And it is incredibly aggressive, the way that they behave. I was reading one account. Scripps did an interview with one of the Chinese nationals that they were targeting. And they said that they act as though they're sort of this facilitator to help Chinese nationals in New York. But one of the individuals, he has an attorney representing him, said that, no, it's way more than that. Apparently they were trying to get his client to come back to China, and they were threatening him on U.S. soil. And they said that the police in China texted him after he refused to return and said it was a picture. He says it was a picture of my daughter caged, and he was so frightened he stopped communicating with his family in China. I mean, what can the U.S. government do to stop this? This is crazy.
It is crazy, but not to belabor the point too much. But if what the Chinese Communist government is doing is essentially investigating and prosecuting wrongthink. But if we have a government that is also investigating and prosecuting wrongthink, it's hard to come up with real life strategies to clean out our own homeland and our cities on this subject area. So first, we have to get America right if we're going to have any hope of catching up with the insidious and malign influences of the Chinese Communist Party. But what this should be is a real warning shot, and hopefully the residents of these fine cities, I know our urban centers have been just bastions of peace, love, and rainbow worship in recent years. Yeah. But if they can get a sense of security and purpose, it won't actually be hard to find, because what these unidentified police stations are doing is persecuting dissidents, persecuting people who don't think the right way about China, and especially the People's Republic of China. They'll go after people who are religious worshipers. They'll go after them if they're human rights dissidents, if they're people who fled from Hong Kong, if they're Taiwanese and think the wrong way about self-determination, or lunatic, bald white guys that come on the Dana show who don't think the right way. They'll come after us too. And I'm really concerned about that last category.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I hear, especially when I hear that's very, very, very dangerous. We're talking with our friend Steve Yates. You can find him on Twitter at YatesComs. BBC reported, too, that in addition to China, now you have Russia and South Africa. Apparently, they had their military, South Africa's military, announced they're going to hold joint naval drills with Russia and China off its coast next month. That's kind of a weird trifecta. What's happening here?
It is, but I mean, if you just look at choke points for transportation and where you would want to move things if you're trying to get around sanctions, You're trying to basically ensure that you have unfettered access if you happen to need to go around Africa to Europe or Latin America, and for some reason your pathway through the Gulf is not going as well as previous. This is China working options and trying to block off opportunities for the West or the civilized world, if there is one left, to put pressure on them. So it's not quite the Belt and Road, but it's something like that to make the world safe for them.
And I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all, but it seems weird that it almost seems as though they're how do I put it? Why would they need to do this if they're not getting froggy? That's the best way
Exactly.
I can ask that question.
Exactly. You know what? Well, if they're up to only good things and just bringing peace and love and cheap product
Right.
out into the world, then they wouldn't really be worried about their pathway to the market getting in the way. They obviously were very, very shell shocked by what the world was threatening to do to Russia with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and they're very focused on avoiding the ability of the West to do the same to them. And so that's clearly the prep mode they've gotten into. And it will shock no one to realize they know that they're up to no good. They know they let the virus out to the world. They know they're trying to let a virus out into the world again. They know that they've been engaging in intellectual property theft. They know that they're manipulating our markets. They know that they're selling arms to the Russians to be used against the Ukrainians on the West's #1 topic of talk. And so, I mean, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and with this, because I keep seeing, well, how should the West respond? How should the West respond? And I've seen a number of governors take more and more Republican governors take some moves to ban the purchase of land from Chinese nationals, especially because it's, they're kind of at that point they're pretty much affiliated with the CCP. That's a good first step, and especially when you consider where some of the purchases are located. I know there's a number of reports about how some might be near this installation or not. I think that's especially considering how they operate and how it can be a national security issue. I think that's perfectly acceptable. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I firmly believe that the America First approach to this stuff needs to build from the grassroots up. You and I and a lot of your audience probably are fed up waiting for Washington to get things right. There's glimmers of hope here or there that there might be an adjustment on China policy, but let's go ahead and take the wins at the grassroots and state level up. There's the governor of Florida, the governor of South Dakota, governor of lots of other states are putting forward processes to scrutinize trade and investment. And first and foremost, my colleagues and I would assert that no foreign entity has a right to property in the United States. It's a privilege.
Right.
And so need not be any kind of sort of criticism about, whoa, how is this fair or unfair? Fair is American citizens having access to American land, and everything else is just a privilege. Now, we want trade, we want investment, that's good for life generally, but the Communist Party of China is not like everybody else. And so I think we've got a groundswell at the state level. I'll be going to South Dakota next week to talk to the governor there about her plans to put a series of policy roadblocks in place to scrutinize any kind of economic dealing with bad actors, but especially on ag land with China, North Korea, Russia, Venezuela, other fun folks out in the world. And I encourage other governors to do more of the same.
Yeah, and it seems like that's a great move for them to do. I mean, it's within their purview to do, and I hope that other Republican governors also follow that path. One last question for you, talking with Steve Yates. This Wall Street Journal hit this morning. There were two headlines that I saw. One had to do with the rate at which we would need to replenish our munitions, our military stocks, because we've apparently given a lot to Ukraine. Wall Street Journal says U.S. weapons industry unprepared for a China conflict because the war in Ukraine is highlighting the inability of U.S. arms companies to replenish military stock and maybe kind of offset some of the things we've been sending. Your last thought on this issue?
Again, this comes down to priorities. Obviously, our government has not placed a priority on having a sufficient stockpile of munitions. You would think that if we encourage people to stock up on some kind of a supply of food, that a limited government that's meant to provide common defense would think about stockpiling and not giving away our national supply that's needed to protect ourselves. But it gets back to the core philosophy of this Ukraine conflict. I support people who want to support Ukraine defending itself, but the Europeans got to step up. They should be tapping out on this, not America.
Exactly.
And so this has got to be one of those things where the narrative changes and reality changes, but it's going to take some time. And it's extremely disappointing to see this stuff because it's a dereliction of national leadership duty.
Amen to that. Stephen Yates at YatesComs on Twitter. Always a pleasure, Steve. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time with us today, as always.